Okay. So the slides are visible, right?
Yes, so the slides are visible.
So hello everyone, welcome to the 11th reading session. This is about the paper Batch Normalization, Accelerating Deep Network Training by Reducing Internal Covariate Shift. This was authored by Sergey Iov and Christian Zeredi. We have two presenters with us. Myself, Sohan Patnaik. I am a third year undergraduate from the Department of Mechanical Engineering and I am currently a head at KDAC. Yatindra Indoria will be accompanying me. He is a second year undergraduate from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. Okay, so let's begin. Before starting the presentation, there are a few important notes. You might be having some doubts, so feel free to put them in the chat of this meeting. We'll address them at the end of the meeting. Finally, a Google form will be released for feedback most importantly, and in that you can also put up any AI related paper that we might be presenting in the upcoming sessions if possible. The basic outline of this presentation would go like this. First, we'll introduce you about internal covariate shift, then batch normalization. Then we'll move into how can we reduce this internal covariate shift. After that, we'll come to know how are we going to enforce normalization via mini batch. We'll look at the backpropagation, the gradient equations, how it is being trained and inferred. We are also going to look into batch normalized CNNs and how can this be useful to incorporate higher learning rates. Finally, we'll be seeing some of the experiments and results and concluding the session. Over to you, Yatindra.
So I'll introduce certain concepts which will run across in this paper. Firstly, gradient descent. Gradient descent and its multiple variations will encounter in this paper, and they are being widely used. One of the primary reasons being M concurrent computations are faster and more efficient than M consecutive computations in modern machines. Then comes the idea of internal covariate shift. To illustrate this, I'll like to take an example. Consider we train a model on a data set and make predictions using it, but now we wish to use it on a different data distribution. The results will obviously be not as good as they were on the previous data set, as this data set, although related, is certainly a little bit different. A similar situation occurs with individual layers of a deep neural network. An individual layer can be seen as a model of for which the data distribution continuously changes as the training proceeds. This phenomenon is called internal covariate shift. So this can slow down training, and dealing with it and stabilizing the data distribution can fasten the training, reduce the number of training steps which we use, and it also has certain other benefits, as we'll see right after. As the input increases in magnitude, the input as in the net input which we give to the non-linearity in our model, then the model tends to go towards the saturated region, in which the derivatives of the non-linearity can go to zero, as it's the case with the sigmoid non-linearity, and the model becomes very slow to train. So this is an issue which we need to deal with. Next comes batch normalization. Batch normalization of a distribution is said to occur when we make the mean zero and the variance equal to unity, which is done by subtracting the mean and dividing by the variance, as Sohan will illustrate.
Okay, so before going into how can we reduce internal covariate shift, first we need to know the concept whitened inputs. So particularly the inputs having mean zero and unit covariance, like the inputs that are sampled from this distribution, are known as the whitened inputs. And it has been observed from previous studies that for any optimization problem, whitened inputs often give faster convergence. So our main motive will be to whiten the inputs. So it can be whitened either by directly modifying the network or by changing the parameters of the optimization algorithm. But one major problem from this is that the gradient descent step might attempt to update the parameters in a way such that the normalization will be updated. So as a result, the effect of the gradient would not be that much. I'll show you one example. Wait a minute. Um, Wait a minute. I'll share the screen again. There is some glitch. Is the screen visible? Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So let's continue. Okay, so let's see this example. Suppose we have the input as u and we are introducing a bias to this. So let's say the bias is b and the gradient descent step will be b will be updated as b plus delta b, right? Okay, so b is just the bias. Now, if we are adding this bias to the input u plus b and simply subtracting the mean of this, like u plus b, we are subtracting the expectation of this. So as b would be a constant, then we have this relation like b would be equal to the expectation of b, right? So the problem here would be that b and expectation of b would be equal. So this will simply result in subtracting the mean from the original input distribution, right? Like the impact of b won't be there to this inputs. So that will create a problem. Like we are updating b at each step. So at a moment, the at some time we'll get this like b will explode and the value of b will be extremely high and the algorithm might not converge. This is a problem. Okay.
Um,
Okay, so let's move on.
yeah. So as we just saw, the issue with the previous approaches, the gradient descent has an issue with updation. So the parameters as the training proceeds are seen to blow up and the model doesn't function properly. So a possible solution can be maintaining a consistent model. But as we can see that to maintain a model which remains same throughout, we'll need the information about the previous parameters as well. We'll need the covariance matrix, calculating it, inverting it, and calculating the root inverse of the same, which is computationally very expensive and thus fairly impractical, especially as the data size increases. Moving ahead, we'll see the solution to the same. So what we do instead is we take individual features and normalize them instead. But here's the catch. There's an issue with normalizing individual features. The issue is they are not always sufficient to capture the complexities of a particular model. For example, when the sigmoid non-linearity is used and the normalization takes place, the data's output actually ends up being in the linear region of the sigmoid, which is not always sufficient to capture the complexities of the model. So what we do instead is we introduce two parameters, gamma and beta, which is scaling and shifting of the model, which can in turn help to shift it and scale it in a way that we actually can capture these complexities. And as it can be thought of, gamma and beta are both trainable parameters. Moving ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see how backpropagation works. Okay, so for backpropagation, we have a loss function, right? We need to propagate the errors in the backward direction. We saw that y will be a function of the normalized inputs, f of xi hat, right? The normalized inputs of are f of xi hat. So first computing the gradient of loss function with respect to xi hat, this is simply a chain rule, right? Loss with respect to yi into this term particularly will be the derivative of yi with respect to the normalized input xi hat. The expression we saw in the previous slide. Similarly, all these expressions are derived in a similar way, like we just simply use the chain rule. I can just give you some insight about this big expression. Like del L of del xi, del L by del xi, we have xi hat, sigma b square and mu b as the functions of xi. So as in the chain rule, the expression would be del L by del xi hat into this expression will be del xi hat by del xi. Similarly, this will be del L by del sigma b square, and this expression will be del sigma b square by del xi. And similarly, the last term. Okay, so coming into the training and inference with batch normalized networks. So batch normalization is nothing but we can simply introduce a layer that just gives this scaling, like the formula we saw earlier. Here you can see one thing, this parameter epsilon is introduced. So why this epsilon is introduced? It is quite possible that the variance of a distribution would tend to zero, right? Like not exactly zero, but it might tend to zero. So introducing this epsilon will somehow stabilize the uh, activated values, like the batch normalized values. For that reason, we introduce this epsilon. And one more thing is that we use unbiased variance instead of the sample variance. In sample variance, we divide the expectation of sigma b square by m, but here in unbiased variance, we use m minus 1. Yatindra, you can go on now.
So considering batch normalization in convolutional neural networks. So first let's understand what an affine transformation is. A basic understanding can be this transformation when maps a certain distribution to another, the collinearity, if there is preserved. Similar to like regular normalization, a batch normalization layer has to be introduced. So firstly, we apply a affine transformation, and after that we apply the non-linearity, and between that we have to apply the batch normalization. This is how the architecture functions. But one important detail, as is stated in the third point, is that the different normalizations across the feature map have to be done in such a way that convolution properties are maintained. Coming to another very important aspect, higher learning rates. As we discussed earlier, this approach of using batch normalization allows us to use very high learning rates. Now, how does that work out? A very significant issue in generally using higher learning rates is that as we use higher learning rates, the model tends to blow up. The weights and biases tend to increase very significantly in their magnitude, which causes issues. But in case of batch normalized inputs, the values are constrained, and the scale actually gets cancelled out. So the parameters don't grow out of bound. And similarly is the thing with gradients. As the scale increases, as the weights tend to increase, the gradients tend to become smaller, which comes out from the mathematical equation of the derivative itself, and the gradient becomes more uniform. Thus, we can use higher learning rates. As in the next slide, we'll see how that speeds up our model's training. So, experiments and results. The first one, as I previously discussed, in this experiment, MNIST dataset was used, which is a dataset which contains images of digits, which are each 28 by 28 pixels. The details of the model are mentioned. 3 fully connected layers with 100 activations each. Sigmoid as the non-linearity. Weights were initialized with random Gaussian values, and it was all followed by a fully connected layer with 10 activations. Network was trained for 50,000 steps, with each mini batch containing just 60 examples. Results can be seen in the graphs. The A graph can show that the number of steps which were required to gain significant accuracy is fairly less in case of introducing batch normalization. Another important aspect in case of internal covariate shift can be seen in graphs B and C. In graph B, we can say that the distribution changes significantly when we don't use batch normalization, and it remains relatively smooth and stable when we use batch normalization. In the next slide, we'll see some other performance aspects. This is when we applied batch normalization to the ImageNet classification. The details of the model and training datasets are as such. The dataset is ImageNet dataset. The model had multiple high number of convolutional and pooling layers, followed by a softmax classifier, which had a thousand classes. The total number of parameters the network had are 13.6 into 10 to the power 6. The model was trained on a distributed architecture with asynchronous stochastic gradient descent. One important thing to note is, other than batch normalization, other things which were tested are also listed below, like increasing the learning rate, reducing the L2 weight like regularization, and so on. The effect on the performance can be seen in the next slide, and Sohan will take you through the same.
Okay, so here you can see the results, like basically the plots and all. So first, the inception network on the ImageNet classification yielded 72.2% accuracy, and it took around 31 million steps to achieve this accuracy. But after introducing the batch normalization with certain learning rate, it took around 13.3 million steps only to reach the same accuracy, and it also exceeded the previous one. It is 72.7%. This X5 and X30 are nothing but, suppose the learning rate is alpha, then BN X5 model, the learning rate is 5 times the baseline model, and in BN X30 model, it is 30 times the baseline model. Here you can see that in BN X5 model, it took around 2 million steps, and in BN X30, it took around 2.7 million steps, and the accuracy also increased. So basically, this gives us the output that introducing batch normalization fastens our optimization algorithm, as well as it also may increase the accuracy to some extent. Now, concluding our presentation, we saw what is interkernel covariate shift and how it affects the training of machine learning algorithms, how normalization can appropriately handle the internal covariate shift problem and make our optimization algorithm faster. We also saw that batch normalization isn't computationally complex. Like, it doesn't add too many parameters. It only adds 2 extra parameters, that was beta and gamma. And it also ensures that the activations come from a stable distribution, which helps in further training of the network. That's all for today. Thank you.